When it comes to birthdays, I'm sure there are two ways people feel about them. Either they're happy and excited, or they fall into a pit of depression because they're faced with getting older. Well, 22-year-old Clare Bernal was definitely part of the former club. She was a beauty consultant at Harvey Nichols, and she and her mom went to Florence, Italy for her 22nd birthday. It was an amazing trip, and suffice to say, it was a much-needed relaxing escape for Clare. But 2 months after this exhilarating trip, Clare was found lifeless on the floor of the place where she worked. When the police were called, they were scratching their heads. Was it a foreign threat? Targeting a bustling and famous place like Harvey Nichols sounded like the perfect intimidation tactic. But when the police further investigated, it turned out that the attacker was not a threat to national security, but rather specifically to Clare. The terrifying case of Clare Bernal is based on something that you've heard time and time again. But nonetheless, it gets all the more frustrating as the details unravel. So we've been working behind the scenes for a long time now to try to give you guys something a little more than just these videos. We've been working to come up with something more physical to help the channel and get you guys something in return, and we've finally done it. I partnered with Bonfire to create this incredible new shirt that's available right now. Just visit the link in the description. The design was conjured up by my wife and I. She helps out a ton behind the scenes, and we sent the idea over to Bonfire, and they came back at us with this. Now, I hope you guys don't think this sounds too conceited or something, but truthfully, this is the coolest shirt I own. I don't say that from a place of, look at me, look at this thing I did. Guys, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful that all of you watch these videos, and I'm grateful for every last one of you guys. And I can't thank you enough just for the opportunity that you've given us. I'm just so grateful to be here and so grateful to be able to do this. And I hope you guys, even if just one or two of you, are as excited as I am about finally getting something physical, you can touch it, to support the channel. Now, this design is only going to be available for a limited time, so if you're interested, I suggest that you pick one of these up as soon as you can. And again, if you want to pick one of these up, just check the link down in the description or down in the comments. But all that aside, guys, thank you. Thank you for helping make my strange little dream a reality. I'm grateful for every last one of you guys, and I mean that, and don't forget that. But let's get back to the story. Welcome to True Crime Stories. If you're new here, I post new true crime documentaries every single week. So if you're into that kind of thing, be sure to hit subscribe. It's totally free and it just keeps you up to date with all my future cases. Clare Bernal was born in July of 1983 to parents Tricia and Martin Bernal in Groombridge, Tunbridge Wells in the United Kingdom. Clare attended St. Gregory's Roman Catholic Comprehensive School in Tunbridge Wells, and afterwards she enrolled in West Kent College, where she got a BTEC National Diploma. Growing up, Clare loved to play with makeup, and according to her mom, Tricia, Clare would spend hours in front of the mirror just dolling herself up. So it was clear that Clare wanted to work in the beauty industry. This led her to study beauty therapy at West Kent College, and after getting her diploma, she was qualified to work as a beauty consultant. Clare, according to her friends and family, was a sweet and gentle soul. She hated confrontation, had the softest, most genuine smile, and just wanted to make the world a peaceful place. Clare was the embodiment of peace and beauty. She was humble and caring, but that also meant she could have been a bit naive. Clare was also very shy by nature, and she wasn't one to talk ill about anyone. According to her mom, Clare didn't have a bad bone in her body. She was pure light, peace, and just an amazing person to be around. Because Clare loved makeup and skincare, she had experience doing theater makeup. And when she saw an ad for a beauty consultant job at the Harvey Nichols flagship store in Knightsbridge, London, she jumped at the opportunity. Harvey Nichols is a high-end department store in the United Kingdom. They have everything: luxury clothes, accessories, makeup, all under one roof. Clare was very passionate about this field, and as fate would have it, she was called for an interview. Clare was prepared when she walked in for that interview, and the employer saw the pure passion dripping from every word she spoke. Not long after, Clare got the anticipated call that she'd gotten the job. Clare was over the moon. One of Clare's friends, Adam Ward, remembered receiving a call from a very nervous Clare right before the interview. She said she didn't know how she had done and she was very on edge. Adam reassured her, knowing that this was just how Clare was. She'd give her best in any situation, but always second-guess herself after the fact. Well, safe to say, when Adam heard about Clare getting the job, he was ecstatic and incredibly happy for his friend. Following her interview, Clare moved to Dulwich in South London, and she lived in an apartment with 2 roommates. As soon as Clare stepped foot in London, it was a dream come true for her. Clare loved the city life and was enjoying her early 20s to the max. Clare was working her dream job and everyone loved her. From her co-workers to the people that Clare consulted with, everyone knew that she was fit for this job. Clare was soft-spoken, quiet, and modest, but professional, and an ambitious woman who made it her life's mission to make every woman look and feel as beautiful as they wanted to be. Fast forward to July of 2005. Clare and her mom Tricia went to Florence, Italy for Clare's birthday. It was a wonderful 5-day vacation and Clare had a blast. They explored, went sightseeing, took loads of pictures, and laughed until they were teary-eyed and delirious. Clare and Tricia were more than just a mother and daughter. They were best friends, and they leaned on each other in times of need. Tricia remembers those days like yesterday, and she looks back on them with a smile on her face, seeing her daughter so happy and carefree. But just 2 months later, someone viciously burst Clare and her family's peaceful bubble, and in the process, Clare lost her life. It was September 13th, 2005, and Clare was looking forward to the end of her shift at Harvey Nichols. As much as Clare loved her job, she was tired and just wanted to go home and have a relaxing night. After all, standing all day at the makeup and skincare counter sounds pretty exhausting. Victoria Daniels, one of Clare's co-workers, was just a few counters down from Clare, and she saw Clare tidying up the counter for the day. As Clare looked up at Victoria, she smiled and mouthed that it was almost closing time. The last thing Victoria remembered was Clare's face lighting up in a smile, and that was when she spotted someone, a man to be exact, behind her. But it all happened so fast that she didn't even have time to think. As the man behind Clare crept closer, Victoria saw a flash of black in his hand, and that was when the entire department store echoed with deafening pops. Victoria and the other workers ran out of the department store. People thought it was a targeted attack. Witnesses heard 4 rounds go off, and finally, when the 5th blast bounced off the walls, everything went eerily quiet. Within minutes, the police swarmed the scene. When they went inside, they were met with a horrific crime scene. Lying on the ground of the luxury store were 2 people, and tragically, one of them was 22-year-old Clare Bernal. The second person was a man. The police didn't know initially who he was, but Harvey and Nichols employees and officials did. It was 30-year-old Michael Pech, the store's own security guard. But the thing is, Michael's wounds were self-inflicted. This painted a very clear picture to investigators. Michael had approached the counter that evening, targeted Clare for whatever reason, and then turned the weapon on himself. All of this was confusing and alarming for the police to hear, but they needed to convey this terrible news of Clare's passing to her family first. So they paid a visit to Clare's mom, Tricia, and when she was unfortunately informed about her daughter's passing, needless to say, she broke down. But Tricia asked the police one very specific question in between her tears. She asked, "It was Michael Pech, wasn't it?" So, besides the police at the crime scene, almost everyone, even Clare's mom, knew who Michael Pech was. And now he'd not only taken Clare's life, but his own as well. So, who was Michael Pech, and why did he attack Clare? Most importantly, how did everyone else know about him, and why was he due to appear in front of a judge? Well, this was the moment when months upon months of torment, fear, and mental torture resurfaced, and it all had to do with Clare. It all started with a chance encounter between Clare and Michael at none other than Harvey and Nichols. Michael Pech was a citizen of both the Czech Republic and Slovakia. He also served in the Slovakian army, but was later discharged for desertion of all things. Michael also worked as a security guard at the United States Embassy, and sometime later, he moved to the United Kingdom, where he now lived in northern London. It was during this time that he got a job as a security guard at Harvey and Nichols in Knightsbridge, the same department store Clare worked at. Michael was also married at one point, but when he moved to London, he was in the midst of a divorce. Michael caught sight of Clare, and he was immediately interested in her. He was smitten with Clare and her warm and shy personality, and the two frequently chatted. Shortly after, Michael asked Clare out on a date in January of 2005. Clare accepted, and the two went on 3 dates over 3 weeks' time. Everything was okay in the beginning, but Clare's mom, Tricia, didn't like Michael for her daughter at all. First of all, he was quite a bit older than her and previously married, which Tricia didn't like. But according to Clare's family, she wasn't head over heels for Michael either. She was just flattered by the attention that he gave her. Michael would shower her with compliments, tell her how beautiful she was, and get this, even professed his love for her after just 3 dates. Clare enjoyed the company and she did like Michael, but maybe not in the same way that he liked her. Well, it turned out that Michael wasn't the best for Clare after all, because just 3 weeks into dating, Clare noticed Michael was becoming very possessive, controlling, and jealous. Clare confided in her mom that Michael wanted Clare to spend all of her time with him. He didn't like it when she hung out with her friends and family, and he didn't ever want her to go home. Now, here's the thing, I totally get being head over heels for somebody. I can even wrap my head around being a little obsessed over someone that you just met, maybe in a healthy way, but telling people that you don't want them hanging out with anyone other than you and nearly preventing them from going home, that's a lot. And mind you, this was something that Clare noticed after the very first date. She just didn't think that it would escalate so quickly. To say that Clare was feeling suffocated doesn't even begin to describe it. One time, after Michael had come back from Slovakia, he insisted that Clare come and pick him up from the airport, and even demanded that he stay over at her apartment, which Clare didn't want him to do. They'd just been on 3 dates. Clare was not about to let a stranger and a possessive creep stay over at her apartment. After a while, Clare walked Michael to the train station and told him that they were over and she didn't want to go on a date with him again. But you guessed it, Michael couldn't comprehend this. I mean, he could, but he chose not to. After Clare left, he called her countless times. And if that wasn't bad enough, he even stood outside her apartment for 2 hours, just hoping she would come outside. Neighbors and Clare's roommates heard Michael shouting, name-calling, and demanding that Clare talk to him. And he only left when Clare's roommate sternly said, "Clare doesn't want to see you." This was an experience that left Clare pretty uneasy. And what was worse was that Michael knew where Clare lived. But anyway, the next day, Clare thought that Michael would give up, but she was wrong. Michael, holding a large bouquet, followed Clare to work and back home and begged her to take him back. Clare turned him down again and again, but this was sadly only the beginning. Clare's phone was constantly littered with messages, calls, and voicemails from Michael. He would call her almost 50 times a day, which is just insane. Michael was wearing Clare down with his possessive and delusional messages. Some of his messages stated, quote, "We're meant to be together. It's our anniversary tomorrow. How should we spend it?" But then came the bombshell. He said, quote, "If I can't have you, no one will." This man was delusional with a capital D. Clare even changed her number at one point, but in typical stalker fashion, he found that out too. And Clare's temporary relief from the bombardment of messages ended with a vicious intensity. Michael also didn't make working at Harvey Nichols easy for Clare either. He would constantly stare at her through mirrors and windows, and would press other store employees to persuade Clare to talk to him. On one occasion, Clare did talk to Michael, but afterward, he pinned her to the wall and professed his love for her, and even went as far as saying that he knew she loved him too. Mind you, this is the store's security guard, so Clare didn't even have anyone to call for help, other than maybe the police. When Clare said that she didn't love him, Michael got extremely angry and screamed in her face, yelling, "Yes you do, you stupid little girl." All of this relentless stalking went on for 2 months, and Clare was starting to get increasingly worried and scared. Michael's actions also caused a lot of problems for Clare at work. She was constantly looking over her shoulder, and she'd clock into work late. She was just a mess. It was March of 2005 when another very frightening incident happened. Clare was walking back home when she saw Michael following her. She managed to get onto the train, but so did Michael. When the train stopped and Clare got out, Michael followed her like a dark and sinister shadow. At some point, he grabbed her arm, and when Clare threatened to report him to the police, His response sent chills down Claire's spine. Michael said, quote, "If you report me, I will kill you." Claire was frozen in fear, but all Michael did was flash his sick smile and he got off at the next train station, but not before tormenting Claire some more by staring at her the whole ride. Claire went home and immediately broke down in front of her mom and told her what was happening. Claire's family was just feeling so helpless. They didn't know how to help Claire, who was now losing sleep over the whole thing. Claire just wanted Michael to leave her alone, but now she couldn't even call the police because she feared for her life. But soon, Claire realized that talking to Michael wasn't going to lead anywhere, so she decided to get her employers involved. Finally, after 2 months of enduring Michael's stalking, Claire took the matter to the Harvey and Nichols officials. See, the head of security at Harvey and Nichols was a former police officer, and he for once took Claire's claims seriously. He even used CCTV cameras to monitor Michael, and when he saw the actions himself, he and other team members agreed to move Michael to a different floor, thinking that it was enough to free Claire from Michael's torment. But obviously it wasn't. Michael knew where Claire lived, and he continued his stalking, but when the store officials found out, Michael was suspended. Following this, the security head encouraged Claire to report Michael to the police. Even though Claire was initially hesitant because she was embarrassed and just wanted it all to end, she did contact the police and file a complaint. And this was likely a very big mistake. Michael was eventually arrested, and interestingly enough, he was arrested at work, where he was handcuffed by the police and permanently fired from his job. But what was so eerie was the way Michael was looking at Claire as he was being loaded into the back of the police car. He was shooting daggers at Claire as if it was all her fault. Claire was very unsettled, and she called her mom right after the incident. Tricia said that Claire told her she didn't want Michael to get into trouble, but he wasn't stopping. If he'd stopped, then Claire would have not contacted the police in the first place. And it's just so heartbreaking to see that even after all this, Claire genuinely had Michael's best interest in mind. And it's just a shame he didn't feel the same way. She had every right to report Michael, but she still felt bad. And it's so insane to see that Claire was still trying to solve things with compassion and peace, and it just shows the type of character she had. Claire was by all means an amazing young woman. Meanwhile, at the police station, Michael was questioned, and infuriatingly, he turned the tables on Claire. He said that he was the one to end the relationship with Claire, but she was insistent on staying with him. It was Claire's word against his, and because the police didn't have any evidence other than Claire's statement, you guessed it, they let him go. The police ordered Michael to stay away from Claire. He was forbidden from visiting her house, her place of employment, nor could he be anywhere in the general vicinity of her. But Michael feared nothing, and just 2 days after being released, he was seen outside Claire's apartment waving at her. When the police were called, Michael fled the scene. This happened another time too, but this time he was caught and arrested for breaching his bail conditions. And as he was being taken away, he was smiling at Claire once again, which is just so creepy. Michael was held at Belmarsh prison for 8 days, and while awaiting trial, he was released on bail yet again while a pre-sentence report was compiled. He was due to appear on September 21st. Michael was granted bail on the condition of not contacting Claire or showing up at her house or workplace. This was bizarre on the police's part. They knew that Michael was never going to stick to the conditions, and he would do anything to terrorize Claire again. Why was he granted bail? That's just beyond me. This woman was so clearly in danger. I've only got 2 guesses about why they did this. Either Claire was so kind-hearted and gentle that she just didn't tell the police the full extent of the stalking, or the officers watching over Michael's case were simply morons. But after getting out of jail this time around, Michael didn't go back to stalking Claire, but he went somewhere else entirely. He booked a ticket to Slovakia, but he wasn't there to meet his family. He went there for firearms training. If you remember, this was around the time when Claire and Tricia went to Florence. They were having an amazing time, but sadly they could never have even guessed that this would be their final holiday together, because Michael was planning something that was beyond evil. Somehow, he was able to travel from Slovakia to the UK with a weapon in his luggage. He purchased this weapon while in Slovakia, and somehow managed to take it out of the country undetected. Just like that, August 31st rolled around, the court date, and Clare was mentally prepared to present evidence in the trial, although she was dreading seeing Michael again. But she got a call from the magistrate court and was informed that Michael had pleaded guilty to the charges against him, and therefore would have no trial. But Michael was allowed to remain free until September 21st, when he would be officially sentenced. Clare was relieved to hear this, but needless to say, it was a bit unsettling that he was allowed to continue roaming the streets until late September. And little did she know, Michael wasn't done with her. Almost 12 days passed by with no torment from Michael, and Clare was feeling happy and free for the first time in a very long time. Before she knew it, September 13th, that was going to be the day when everything fell apart. Michael was no longer stalking Clare. He was just looking for the right time to launch a vicious attack. He was ready to make his words a reality. Michael wouldn't get Clare, and he was going to make sure that no one else would either. Around closing time, it's believed that an armed Michael, under the influence of drugs, made his way into Harvey and Nichols by sneaking through the back door and creeping up on an unsuspecting Clare at the beauty counter. He then aimed at Clare and fired round after round, 4 in total, and tragically ended Clare's life on the spot. He then turned the weapon on himself and pulled the trigger once, ending his life too. This was a very traumatic and gruesome scene because a lot of employees witnessed the attack, and they were left literally scarred for life. Michael Pech, a delusional and obsessive excuse of a man, couldn't bear Clare's rejection, so instead of just moving on with his life, he decided that she would be the one to pay the price for rejecting him. Following the attack on Clare and Michael taking the coward's way out, everyone was left shocked and terrified. And since Michael took matters into his own hands, there would be no consequences for his senseless and animalistic actions that led to Clare's untimely end. It was just lights out for him. But was it unexpected? A lot of people don't think so. Stalking is something that's almost always taken too lightly. A lot of victims of stalking have lost faith in the police because they do nothing about it until everything takes a turn for the worst, like in Clare's case. Clare did everything she could. She tried talking to Michael. When that didn't go as planned, she reported him. But then he was released on bail over and over on conditions that were just meaningless words on paper. His threats took shape, and an innocent life was taken, leaving a bereaved family with nothing, not even justice, closure, or any answers, because the wrongdoer successfully evaded the law to the very end. Weeks later, Clare's funeral was held, and her parents were so heartbroken to see their daughter, once full of life and love, now being lowered into the ground. Clare's friends and loved ones showed up to pay their respects to a woman who had so much more to see in life, but she would never get to do any of it because of one single person. What was even more heartbreaking was that Clare's attack and subsequent passing led to a rift between her parents. At an inquest following Clare's passing, Clare's dad and Trisha's ex-husband, Martin, with whom Clare was living with during her final days, accused Trisha of trivializing the stalking that Clare was going through. He also blamed the police for serious loopholes and blunders in Michael's investigation, like Clare not having gone through a formal risk assessment. Martin also stressed that because Trisha was taking the matter lightly, Clare didn't confide in him about the stalking, and that he didn't know about any of it until things had escalated to the point of no return. When Trisha took the stand, she was tearful, and she admitted that she was foolish to believe that the police had everything under control. She further said, quote, "I had an extremely close relationship with my daughter, and I would have done anything. I thought that the police had it in hand and that she was safe, and that's my mistake, and I have to live with that." This is so heartbreaking and awful to see two grieving parents going through this. Truth be told, neither of them were at fault, but grief takes incredibly strange forms, and this, unfortunately, was likely one of them. It's understandable, but that doesn't make it right. Trisha, following Clare's passing, advocated for a change in stalking laws and petitioned that stalking is a serious and high-risk crime. She teamed up with several families of stalking victims, and the Family Justice Center was established. This was a platform for anyone suffering from stalking or violence, and all of the cases under this umbrella are to be classified as high risk. Trisha, along with other families of stalking victims, appeared on many public media platforms and urged for the passing of the law. Finally, in 2012, stalking was officially listed as a criminal offense. But has stalking and other escalated crimes stopped since 2012? No. Even though Trisha's work is remarkable, law enforcement authorities still don't take stalking seriously, at least not until something terrible happens to the victims. The thing is, monsters like Michael are relentless, and they fear nothing. They obsess over someone until their lives are completely paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Stalking is a very serious crime, and lots of people are silent victims of it. They're silent because they know if they go to the police, they won't believe their stories. Or worse, they'll just be told, there's nothing we can do. This has to change. No one deserves to live their life in fear, and no one has the right to terrorize an innocent person just because they won't bend to their will. It's nauseating to me to see that nearly every law enforcement agency has a hands-off policy when it comes to stalking. The thing is, I get it. You can't arrest someone if they haven't committed a crime. But you can certainly do something. When you know someone is a stalker, even a little bit of intimidation can go a very long way. It's just sickening that Claire's family had to go through all of this. And for what reason? Michael took his own life anyway. He could have just done that in the first place and left Claire alone. But he wouldn't be satisfied until he took everything from Claire and her family. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I want to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Amanda Wheeler and Daniel Young. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public, and it's currently the best way you can support the channel and help out. And I really appreciate all of you that have decided to do that. So if you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or find the link down in the description. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and just keeps you up to date with all of my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.